Mr. President.
The senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the process of confirming a Supreme Court justice is supposed to be lengthy, thoughtful, rigorous. I'm grateful to the presiding officer and to Chairman Durbin for doing it right with Judge Brown Jackson. Judge Jackson has answered hours of questions about her judicial philosophy, why she made certain decisions, why she represented certain clients, how her background has shaped her worldview. Nearly every detail of her professional and personal life has been and will continue to be interrogated publicly as she goes through the final stages of this process. But a strange thing is going to happen when Judge Jackson finally takes her seat on the Supreme Court. She will, after all of this review and scrutiny, become effectively immune from ethics standards. Why is that? Because every federal judge, circuit judges, district judges, Court of International Trade judges, Court of Federal Claims judges, bankruptcy judges, magistrate judges, every federal judge is bound by a code of ethics in order to safeguard the judiciary's neutrality and transparency. All federal judges except for 9, the Supreme Court. And it's not because the Supreme Court is so highly regarded by the American people. In fact, the opposite is true. Trust in the institution's reputation is in rapid decline right now. According to a recent C-SPAN poll, only 30%, about 37% actually, of likely voters believe that the Supreme Court acts in a, quote, serious and constitutionally sound manner, unquote. In a democracy that prides itself on a fair and independent judiciary, that's unacceptable. It's worrying, but it's not surprising. Recent revelations surrounding Justice Thomas and his wife's involvement in the events of January 6th have finally brought attention that those standards we try to uphold during the confirmation process quickly disappear upon confirmation. Now, this isn't some new phenomenon. We've seen justices, both liberal and conservative, promote political fundraisers, speak at partisan events, fail to recuse themselves from cases with pretty clear conflicts of interest. And if the past is prologue, the recent incident that has gained a lot of attention regarding Justice Thomas's family, it won't be the last. Now, I first introduced a bill that would require the Supreme Court to adopt a code of ethics 10 years ago. And I've reintroduced a version of that bill in every Congress since. The majority of Americans agree with me. There's absolutely no reason why the Supreme Court shouldn't be subject to a code of conduct just like every other federal judge. But the court disagrees. John Roberts said in 2011, when he was asked about this, that, quote, the court has no reason to adopt a code of conduct as its definitive source of ethical guidance, unquote. Well, it has a reason now. And to be clear, I'm not talking about a code of conduct that's written by Congress. Instead, my legislation would require the Judicial Conference to create a binding code of conduct that applies to all federal judges and justices, including those on the Supreme Court. It's a simple step that would improve transparency, enforce accountability, and restore some lost faith in the institution. And frankly, because of that diminishing faith, it's in the court's interest to do everything possible to try to help rebuild public confidence. During Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation process, Justice Kagan put it best. She said, the court's strength as an institution of American governance depends on people believing it has a certain kind of legitimacy, on people believing it's not simply an extension of politics, that its decision-making has a kind of integrity to it. If people don't believe that, they have no reason to accept what the court does. Justice Kagan said it well. And right now, that belief is teetering dangerously close to the edge. The spouse of a Supreme Court justice was involved in an effort to organize a coup an overthrow of a democratically elected president of the United States. That is extraordinary. That is not normal. It should not be treated as just another flavor of legitimate political action. And the fact that there is no clear binding code of conduct that addresses this kind of behavior and no clear standards of recusal for Supreme Court justices that the American people can see and trust, it's just unacceptable. I think that my Democratic and Republican colleagues can agree on this. The American people deserve to know that our Supreme Court justices are being held to the highest standards, whether they be justices appointed by Democratic presidents or justices appointed by Republican presidents. It's not enough for us to just trust the court any longer to self-enforce a secret internal code of ethics. The highest court in the land cannot be exempt from the standards that we hold every other federal judge to. I'm glad that this piece of legislation has gained additional co-sponsors just over the course of the last week. I hope that it eventually becomes a bipartisan piece of legislation, and I'd urge my colleagues to join me in holding the court to account. Mr. President, I ask that the following remarks be treated as separate in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, finally, I know votes are pending, but I am also coming to the floor to request, as I will in a moment, unanimous consent for the nomination and approval of Javier Ramirez to be Director of the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service. I would guess that not a lot of my colleagues know much about the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, and that is because we normally don't have to have a debate over the confirmation of its director on the floor of the United States Senate. The agency is an independent one that has been in place since 1947. Its mission is to preserve and promote labor management, peace, and cooperation by providing mediation and conflict resolution services to industry, government agencies, and communities. The FMCS has 10 regional offices, more than 60 field offices. Its headquarters are here in Washington, D.C. It does the basic blocking and tackling of keeping our economy running. It's charged with trying to avoid conflict between labor and management so that we don't have strikes, so that we don't have work stoppages, so that our economy runs as smoothly as possible. It's a pretty non-controversial agency, and the individual who has been selected to run it is equally non-controversial. He is a career public servant. Javier Ramirez began at the FMCS in 2005. He's currently the director of agency initiatives there. To me, this should be a no-brainer that we could come together and decide as a body that we are going to make sure that we have someone running an agency that is pretty vital to the smooth flow of our economy and the mediation of disputes between labor and management. And so I'd ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to executive session to consider the following nomination, calendar 665, Javier Ramirez of Illinois to be Federal Mediation and Conciliation Director, that the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, that any statements related to the nomination be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
Senator from Indiana.
reserving the right to object, Senator Murphy indicates that there should be no discussion really because this is such a slam dunk. I'm coming up to talk about it. We do not do regular order. Our job is to be there for advice and consent on any nominee. We've tried to shortcut the process not only on nominations, but even things as important as our budgets. We don't do anything anymore with discussion that gets out maybe the rest of the story. I believe that on any of these, rather than proceeding to the floor, you ought to at least have a discussion in committee. That didn't happen. There was a vote, but not a discussion. And when you look at this non-controversial nominee, I think there's at least some things to think about. Harry Katz, a professor at the Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations, said Mr. Ramirez could be open to expanding the range of disputes that the agency will consider. So, kind of hinting at some political enterprise, that you'd be doing more than just interpreting. He's not alone. Wilma Liebman, a former NLRB chair under President Obama, has told media that Mr. Ramirez, quote, should be open to creative expansion of what the mediators do. We need public servants who are going to strictly interpret the law, and this looks like if we don't at least have a recorded vote, it could slip through, and it's not maybe as uncontroversial as Senator Murphy might indicate. I have reservations about the nominee, mostly about the process, very indicative of the way that things work here in general, not only for nominations, but critical policy. I think that's got to change. Therefore, I do object.
Mr. President.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, I know colleagues are eager to get the vote going. 20 seconds in response. This place is grinding to a halt. I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary the number of non-controversial nominees that are now required to move through full votes, cloture motions on the floor, U.S. attorneys that never, ever had to come before this floor for votes and debate now do. This is an exercise in fundamentally breaking the Senate. This place only works with UC. We cannot run every single nominee through regular order, or we would be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm grateful for my colleagues' comments. I hope that we will be able to confirm Mr. Ramirez, but this is the kind of work that the Senate used to be able to do through UC, and it is unfortunate that we continue to have this breakdown in process. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session and resume consideration of the Garrity nomination, which the clerk will report.
Nomination, the judiciary, Sarah Elizabeth Garrity.